So this is Senate appropriation, and we're back on our budget work for FY 25. And one of the areas where we've had a lot of concern is the backlog in our justice system. We've heard from our state's attorneys who have been concerned about grant positions, money going away, what impact that would be to just across children not getting freed for adoption, and the list goes on and on. So one of the areas that the governor's budget does not provide funding to address is really any significant impact other than the two judges, but there's an issue around court security, the report that we had on that, and the list goes on. So Senator Sears, and I have to caution everybody, just as a placeholder, we're recognizing if we start something up, we're gonna recognize full year costs. We're not starting out, with 1 quarter or a half a year, that's gonna have to be annualized. The impact is not fully accommodated. And so, this is, if you were to have, additional money, where would we spend it? And where it would, how you would do it if you had 8.5 million to work with. I don't know whether we have 8.5, because everybody keeps giving us additional requests. So please note that this is a draft, and this is a response from our judiciary committee, and I appreciate the work that has gone into it, because these are tough decisions. So I'm gonna let Senator Sears, who has this section of the budget, he did an additional hearing in your committee to take more detailed testimony from the various players, and is coming up with his recommendation for where any additional money would be, how it should be allocated across this this whole justice system, both within the court system as well as the associated programs that are serving this population.
Thank you.
And I thank you, Dick. It's very helpful to have this kind of work done, because this is hard. And maybe I don't remember correctly, but I thought you said you had over $30 million of requests.
Yeah, but it came down to 22 million when we re-looked at it.
Oh, so you weren't as draconian as I thought.
No, well, pretty draconian. The first is I don't just wanna, this is from the Judiciary Committee as well as myself. I did a lot of work on it. But it's based on testimony and judiciary. So, we funded 15, we would recommend funding 15 staff positions in the judiciary. And when we had our testimony, Terry Corson, the court administrator, said that fully funding this 1.3 million would result in $200,000 in savings are included in the appropriation. So we took the 200,000 off and ended up at the 1.1 million. The 120,000 language access is absolutely required by the feds. I don't know why the governor would not put that in his budget, because you have to do that.
Probably knowing it had to be done.
Probably. And we funded 11 new judicial officers for judicial security. That's roughly half of their.
They wanted 2 million.
They wanted 2 million. We funded 11 judicial officer 2, and that's their under S-17, which was the security bill. So their total over the governor's recommend would be 2.2 million. Next, the state's attorneys. If there's any questions.
When you say they, you're talking about the judiciary.
Yes,
Yeah.
judiciary's total is 2.2.
And they wanted 6.
And they wanted 6. State's attorneys, number one priority was the 945,000 in vacancies, which they don't have those vacancies. So they would have to lay people. And then, there is.
Are these the positions that are originally federally funded?
No, I don't believe so. They were just,
Okay.
the governor's budget just Down in line 8 is the, thing. I think that they were ARPA funded.
Oh, I guess that's what.
That's what
So in line 6, we were proposing, we, the Judiciary Committee, were proposing 7.5 positions, 1/4 of the 30 that were requested. For the deputy SAs, victims advocates, and administrative legal assistants. In further conversations, we also recommended that they have the 3 transport deputies. This morning, while we were discussing it, we also got text from John Campbell and Amy Noonan that if the 277 was available, they'd like it to go into line 6 for the deputy sheriff, deputy state's attorneys. That is their biggest priority, that they're not sure they can fill the 3 transport deputies.
So that's what the committee.
Yeah, the committee, so the committee would recommend 1177.
How,
The 900,
do they decide, how
Nine,
do they decide how to break it up between?
yeah, well,
Deputy,
instead of a quarter, we're pulling a little, about a third. It would come out to about 9 positions.
instead of the 7.5,
Yeah.
instead of a quarter, a little bit up to a third.
But is it like 3 of each, 3 deputy?
Well, they could do
Or they
5
decide?
deputies and 5 victims advocates.
So it's up to them.
To them,
Okay.
how they would do that. That's the way it was last year. So for them, it's 2.122 million. 2,000,100,000. The Defender General is interesting in that all of these things that we are recommending being funded are already under contracts, and the governor didn't put them in his budget. And so without the 1.2 million in caseload relief contractors, it would cost him, the Defender General, about 2 million. And the Northeast Kingdom Law, Northeast Kingdom Law Orleans County contract is already under contract at 93,000. We didn't recommend the 12 and 13, but do recommend the current signed contract obligation, which is a current obligation.
The 14, 15, and 16 then? or-
Yeah, so all these things come up to 1.8 million.
And then you move the money from DCF, the language to
Yeah.
move that money.
Yep.
They need 5 limited service positions. That's a note underneath,
I think that's how they do the backlogs.
limited service.
I believe that's what.
That's number 10, so they just number 10.
5 limited service, yeah, it is number 10, up in the top. It says,
And they're the ones that are already under contract.
Yeah, all of this 1.2 million is under contract.
yeah, 5 limited service, are those, you gonna hire limited service attorneys?
I have to go back.
Percentage,
All right. Do you feel a bit like Solomon?
yeah,
Let's keep going down to crime victims.
okay, the AGO, this is the move that's neutral, 43.5 is what the AGO needs, and they also,
But I thought that was in the governor's budget. I thought
no,
that when they fully funded the attorney position, attorney general, and left 40,000 in crime victims. That, which had been their share of
I
funding.
think you may be right,
That's in the House budget.
that's in the House.
But not in the governor's?
I can't remember if it was in the House. I know that it was in the House budget.
The 85,000 is not in the governor's. And the crime victim services feels like they need that $85,000 position because it will help them to get additional grants besides the ones that come from the state. In order to continue to get revenue. And just signing opportunities.
They had the position back home
No money.
No, we had 85,000,
It says position does not need to be created, you just
Right.
added the money.
just right.
They have that position already?
I think so.
Just, okay.
And then they have a $300,000 shortfall, it's a 300,000 in one-time recommendation.
And then I thought joint fiscal said that in fact, we looked at it and felt that the court said that they did get the money according to the flip. So, who's,
I took that from Jenny Hall.
well, Chris, were you the one who told me that? Someone told me that this morning, shows you how overloaded my brain is, that the court, the revenues came into the courts and the crime victims got the money that was their allocation of the money of that revenue.
$47.
Yeah,
Yeah, that, I may have said it, and Grady may have said it, and Amy may have said it. We've all been paying attention to this, but yes, they were able to transact $47 in FY '24 in the appropriate way.
and so did that result in the 300,000? Is
I would have to double check with Grady.
I think that's where
that the rub?
Yep.
Did they get a portion of it?
I don't know, I don't think so. I just got the $300,000 short.
Oh,
Jennifer.
well, I don't know, it's hard to reconcile if the court said they got it and they
Yeah,
allocated
let
it.
me double check with Jeff.
That's fine. You've got time to do that. Because we're not making any decisions right now. And then now down to court diversion.
Yeah, that is from the AGO, Attorney General's office, which runs part of the court diversion. That's 296,700. And then there's, the 354,731 was language. For the court diversion. And then 250 is for the barge, which is the DCF court diversion. It's so confusing to try to figure out what is court diversion, because there's three different funding sources. And they're asking for this, and this, but what they testified to is, I think what we're giving them. Then you got the letter asking for 1.3 something.
Yeah, but that's, I don't know how much is in the base right
Well,
now.
that's what I don't know. I know
They got,
that- that what we're providing here is what they testified, but
yes. Even level funding at 3.5 million will experience due to inflation and staffing costs. So if you give the 3% the same as we have everything else, then what's 3% on that?
well, part of the problem is
What's, anybody
corrections.
calculate 3% on 3.5 million?
Well, that's not what the problem is. They're getting it from three different agencies. Basically,
But it's all general fund, isn't it? Mostly general fund?
Yeah.
Well, if it's general fund, it didn't matter what.
But-
Pocket,
I know, but 17 of them are CRJs. But some of them, like Richie's and mine, are single, but in Senator Lyons. and
what's 3% of 3.5 million?
4 or 5 different ones that are
What,
105.
attached to cities.
105,000?
We've been trying to get an answer from them as to what, and we keep, but they're talking in a different language than I talk. Because we're looking at all three state agencies, the Attorney General, Department of Corrections, and DCF.
Should add up to the same,
Well,
you know, from the three of them total.
all I can tell you is
Well, if they got 2.5 for barge. 3% on 2.2 million. Is less than 105.
60 something.
Yeah, so they want well more than, 3% increase.
The 250 was in the budget line last year, and, um, and they believe it was in the base, and I have some language that I can dig out that when we put together the documents about intent language, that it said that 250 was.
They got money about $800 and something thousand.
Yep.
From the Department of Corrections under Justice Reinvestment.
Yep.
They believe that was new base. Department already does 2.2 million, I believe, in general fund. And they thought that 3 million now was base. When it came time, the department proposed, I think, a 3% interest on the 2.2. And that's when they said, you're cutting us this money. That became confusing because the department insists they're not cutting them. And I don't know if they'll get justice reinvestment money again.
We don't have an issue around one-time money being put in, and although we considered it one time, the agency getting it, that's my new base, and that's what you're obligated to provide. Is there an element of that?
Yes, my opinion, not theirs.
I guess the thing is, we have a host of community-based systems. And we just said, if we give 3% across the board, whether we're talking about our DAs, our SSAs, our parent-child centers, et cetera, then what they're asking for is well above 3%. For everything else.
Well, we're trying to be responsive to what their budget requests were. And the judiciary committee feels they provide a
In the intent.
valuable resource to our community, so opposing this, we can, they won't be happy, we won't be happy. And probably that's what we're doing, stuff,
Well, at least we're doing more than the governor.
doing a lot. Yeah.
Huh.
Now, the 1.1 million based on due to raise the age, and I don't know how anybody figured that out, but that was just another piece of testimony. The judiciary committee, first of all, believes that there's no evidence that raise the age when we went to 18 caused a huge increase in the cost. And there's no evidence that 19 will. And secondly, there will be a corresponding drop in corrections costs. As kids go, 19-year-olds will be going, and the majority of 19-year-olds will be going to the juvenile system. So that'll be another DCF in their large program.
All right,
So we didn't do that 1.1 million. Then this is where we,
Can I just ask one more question? So the percent increase that they're looking for due to inflationary pressures is 10%?
well,
that's the community justice centers, but not everybody's a community justice.
I know, but I'm just looking at how we're treating all the other communities.
I know, I'm feeling the same way.
Well, this isn't, I don't believe this is 10%,
Oh,
depending upon how you. I can't answer.
We can't.
We tried to be responsive to what they requested,
okay.
but they have not been clear. I don't believe that,
Level funding is 3.5 million,
we don't know.
which would be experienced as a cut due to inflation and staffing costs, which
That's
is.
that's only the DOC part,
Right, because the justice stuff.
right, it doesn't
Alright.
include the AGO or the
No.
large.
So if you were to do 3%, like everybody potentially, we've got from health and welfare, 3% of 3.5 million, if that is in fact their base. Right now, they're
It's not.
level funded.
No, their base is not 3.5.
It says even level funding at 3.5. Well, let me ask, level funding, did that include some one-time money?
Well, even if you included the one-time money, it wasn't over 3 million. It was 2 million.
And they think they want a 3.9 million to be allocated.
Okay, out of correction. Amy,
Yeah.
you have the correct.
So what I had was 3.54 for DFC was million was the base,
3.1.
5.4.
All right, so the 3.5 that's referenced here,
That's
that's in the base,
Mhm.
that's the base.
Yeah.
Okay.
The governor's budget?
Yes.
Okay. And so they're saying if you kept them level funded, they would have a cut. Now, that's the same argument that every other entity that is asking for money is saying. So if you gave, assume it's 3.5, if you did 3%, then that's the 105, 110, okay. That's what it amounts to.
Okay. We're fine. Dollars.
Right, so,
The basis.
well, it's really hard to figure out.
Is they started out telling me they had a $900,000 cut from the corrections. That's,
All I can do is take the email, the memo that we
Yeah.
got, and it said, we urge you to give them 3.9. They want 3.5 that is in the governor's base, and it say is level funded, plus a 10% increase for rising staff costs, programming costs, and inflationary costs. So those are all exactly the same factors that every other community-based organization is confronting.
Is it
So-
105, not 110?
Yeah.
Well, I wrote down 105.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right,
all right,
3% is 3.5 million.
but we can agree on that.
well, I think we have to have, on one basis, would you say, you know, you're getting X, Y, or Z unless it's absolutely.
Based on.
um,
Yes, the last Friday, I was totally confused by them and remain a little confused.
Well, I think this email, this,
Well, that made it more,
it seems to be clearer.
okay,
Well, that's on the 354, and then the 250. It looks to me like that was matched with Medicaid last year. Because, they got 108 and leveraged with Medicaid to make, 250. And that was level funded, that grant from last year.
What, now they want to increase to 1 million? Was it last?
No, it's the 250 that's,
I'm looking at the note.
Okay.
I mean, I'm very sympathetic, but I have to say, unless if you can argue that somehow it's a core function of government, like, I don't know, I mean, everybody who gets a grant is saying they're providing a critical service to government. All right, so Barge, you think they got, what did they get? MCO? They got Medicaid? What did they get?
well, I know.
all I got it for now was they,
We need to get
leveraged in, with Medicaid, to make the 250.
This is just, this,
So
I
this,
think it was meant.
yeah, like, this was,
But in order to Medicaid, you either have to build back a service or it's an MCO investment. So, we're gonna have to, I don't think we can figure this out right now.
One other item on line 21 is the one-time citizens data partnership, which is something that an opportunity came up at the last minute, and we have a letter from the commissioner who's very supportive of the idea and that will match.
Oh, that's your
$300.
300.
Yeah, that's
$1,000.
another
That
300,000 at one time.
Which includes COLAs and staff.
I mean, one thing we have here is
Increased operation.
our data is, yeah, but I'm talking now about the one-time citizens
Yeah,
data partnership.
it's got two columns there. One is, a match for a grant.
And that we,
I think that makes sense.
think makes sense, and one of the things that we keep finding out is our data regarding case management and individuals is horrible. in both DCF and DOC. And I'm sure other agencies. as well.
Sure. I think,
And then on the back,
I guess, all I would say, anybody who's gonna be around here in future years, the more boards we create, the more commissions we create, the more programs we create. We have to anticipate that there's gonna be, a lot of costs associated. Now, I see on the back, you heard from Human Rights Commission, and you're recommending, this response, no response.
well,
And victims.
No increase, so they.
I'm not sure who's responsible for the Human Rights Commission, but they testified that their need for both of those positions, and they did it in here. Is high, and particularly the intake specialists.
So,
We did have the discussion on domestic violence accountability with Chris Root, and I understand the concern, so I think we will make it an issue for the justice oversight and the joint fiscal, I hope. Because we really do need to find a stable funding for these important programs that are now losing money because we don't find people as much.
you victim services you're talking about.
But, yeah.
All right, so basically, your priorities were to shore up, the courts, the,
And we did approve funding for the legal aid staff for the, new Vermont Bar Foundation request for civil legal services. Development. We didn't want to start new programs. That was basically why.
So, on the,
But the House, funded a lot of these things half year. All of these things half year, which creates. But they raised the corporate tax, which allowed them to do that.
What tax?
Corporate. H880, which is in Senate Judiciary, raises the corporate tax, but doesn't start until. The funding wouldn't start coming in until next January, so they funded all of these things beginning January 1. And then in 2026, funded them for the new increases. So they funded all 22, well, most of the.
We have similar funding and we have three taxes, including corporate tax and page 7.3.
Oh, really? I wonder if that's the same,
So
it's a double increase or it's got the same money
Look,
twice?
the only thing I can say is what the House did for taxes is what the House did. The
yeah,
Senate is not gonna entertain that level of taxation.
yeah.
What we're doing here actually is gonna require revenues to be raised, and I don't think anybody needs to kid themselves. If the governor vetoed a budget last year over DMV fees, we are gonna have a difficult time getting a budget out, even with the revenue increases that we're talking about. So, the more you conflate those bills and what they plunked into them, the more complicated. Our goal is, what are our priorities and what are we gonna put in the budget and how do we make it work within the box? And that, is gonna be really, it's very, very confusing. And, to have done that and to, establish your priorities through separate bills and not through the total lens of all the different priorities, because I went to a legislative breakfast and the person on ag in the House said, well, and we did this and we sent it to, and we sent this. And now and it didn't get included. Now we're getting, well, the House ag supported it. So of course, the ag committee will support it, or, you would like to do more on
Oh, yeah.
justice, or you would like to do more. But we're gonna have to say what is reasonable here. And I would just caution anybody in this room who thinks that our revenue increases are gonna begin to come out, that's not gonna happen. And so I just need to give that fiscal and budgetary reality. We're gonna put it all on our list, and we did that with the recovery centers, where in fact, the budget as came over from the House took out base money for our community coalitions and substituted one-time money and used that freed up base money to expand another base expenditure, which is basically shell budgeting, because then you've created a shortfall deliberately in the next year. So recoveries is gonna be on our list, and it's gonna have to be prioritized against everything else that we have before us in terms of getting to a bottom line. So I'm just saying that for the benefit of anybody who's listening to our discussions, exactly the budgetary and fiscal reality that this committee is confronted with. But we're the only committee where all of that comes together and you have to weigh it out and make some very, very difficult choices here.
Historically, that's
No.
not been true. Historically, both appropriations committees, both in the House and in the Senate, each passed their budget and tried to level fund the budget. The House is freely, with all of those bills, creating an expectation level that is unrealistic in the real world. And they sent things out that just is unrealistic.
Well, unfortunately, it might be, but the reality is that we're having to make the,
And they forced us into all the hard decisions.
you know, but we're also, but also what we have in this ad hoc kind of arrangement is that some of our core services have not been funded at all. They've been level funded. And those are the services that were put in place in the community when we shut down the institutions. So this whole method of sort of ad hoc of budgeting and appropriation means that sometimes what are really basic responsibilities of government don't get addressed. And that's why it's so important to put it all together. And it's not an easy job, and it's weighing very heavily because everybody's saying, we want it, we don't want to prioritize, we're gonna send it to you. And then you have to figure out who gets how much and how you're gonna direct it. And that is the role of this committee, but it's not, in this environment, it seems like it's been more difficult because expectations are outstripping what we have to work with. And I'm gonna not lecture anymore, because the committee fully gets it. But I will tell you, it has been a very difficult process to try to take all these disparate pieces and extract from them what we feel we need to include in the budget, because the one bill that's gonna get conference is the budget bill. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So I realize you got these disparate bills that came with tax revenue, et cetera. That's gonna be up to finance, but ultimately finance will raise the money at the level that we feel is reasonable. And that's just the way we're gonna work with our committee next door. And so anybody who thinks because a House passed bill that carried an appropriation and some additional spending, it's not gonna happen.
Well, even with their revenue bill that they passed, the housing pieces where you raise 63, where you spend 63 million and it only raises 40, puts us in a terrible position.
No.
At the end,
That's why I'm just saying, we're gonna have to start and, we're not building from the vehicle by which we're building what our spending is and what we're gonna fund, it's gonna be the budget. So there may be some miscellaneous bill that will float along, but to a large extent, with rare exception, it's gonna be what we have and the decisions that we're gonna make. Now, I will go back and remember, we did the one-time list and we're already what, depending on how you cut it, 13 million in the hole. It is not gonna be an easy next couple of days. And we are going to, at this point, take what you've got, Dick.
I know,
I know you're not, because you ran out of money.
well, no, I did, but I also, there's one more item. That's 195, which was the bail bill.
I know, that's you gave one.
Yeah, 1.2 million to ourselves.
I know.
We already cut it in half.
For the monitoring device.
Well, it's everything that's,
But you wanna put 1.2 there?
yeah, because this is absolutely necessary. Well, the problem of bail is huge, and the problem of monitoring people and doing the right thing, to have alternatives. Yes, I think it's necessary. It's not a
It's new,
Department of Corrections will run.
it's new.
Well, it's new and it's old. We've been electronic monitoring, but we
That's
haven't
not
been
new.
electronic monitoring detainees. And we've been at out home confinement. But we've only got like 7 people on it. The idea is to expand it to, and we have never monitored the people who are on.
So if you expand it, will this take out people that are being detained in?
Says so in the bill that the only people that can be on home confinement are people who would otherwise be incarcerated.
So what is the estimate in terms of, I mean, I love all the social calculus that goes in this room. So if I gave you 1.2 million, how much can you save for and prison beds?
Well, we would say probably.
And why shouldn't we do this through
20.
justice reinvestment?
I mean,
Why shouldn't we do this through justice reinvestment?
because the justice reinvestment money will come in every higher and be able to use for more things. We will get probably more prison beds, because right now, we're running around 500 detention beds,
I know.
and we're running, fewer people actually incarcerated on sentences than ever before. Or not, I
So
shouldn't say
if
ever.
you do this, will we actually reduce the number of out-of-state beds we're buying?
I think we would.
Well,
It's hard.
so how would we know this is successful?
Because we've reduced the number of people on detention. We'd see our detention numbers go
In
back.
that who are incarcerated?
There should be some savings there if you take them and put the,
Every bed,
Well, we
there's
don't
no
want-
savings in beds in Vermont.
No, because unless you can shut down an entire wing, you've got those fixed costs.
So
It's all
unless you
out-of-state
close
beds.
a wing of a prison, you're not saving money.
It all would have to
So
be
all
done
the
out
money
of state.
saved is from out of state. We've got like 120 people out of state.
So if you free up beds here, you can bring somebody.
Yeah,
That's the whole theory behind,
that's why it's simple for the men, not for the women. Because you can, reduce the women's
So-
population, but not reduce the cost.
so let me ask, this is base.
when we have,
Could you do one time and think about, in fact, if it generates the savings on out-of-state beds, how much out-of-state beds would you have to get to 1.2?
There are 30,
remember
my calculator broke.
the out-of-state bed.
There, I believe 38,000.
I know, but
a year.
every bed you don't buy out of state is savings, unless you shut down an entire wing, you've still got the fixed costs that go with, 300 mile correctional facilities.
38,000. It would be 380,000.
Yeah.
For every 10 beds, 380,000, I think. And then there's additional state savings that I don't calculate. Of,
Yeah, you need to have 40 beds, you'd actually, to have it break even.
And their state beds,
I don't think you could, I don't, like,
definitely get
your state beds cost how much there?
94,000.
So if we bring a 38 bed person home, we're gonna have to bring,
You're already paying the state bed cost.
you've got those are fixed costs, unless you can shut down a wing. And the way our correctional facilities are designed, they're very staff intensive. And that's been one of the,
I think
you know,
it's 38,000.
okay.
I thought the out-of-state guys were the bad ones.
Well,
They
they're
are.
all in one.
They're the longer term, they're longer term incarcerated, yeah, their sentences are longer.
So you're gonna wanna take somebody out of the in-state bed to put her.
No, you won't, if take one out-of-state bed, in-state bed, it doesn't save anything, because you've got all your staffing and your
He
fixed
said
costs of the
Take them
facility.
out of the prison and put a collar on them and then.
And then put the out-of-state guy in the.
Well, that's exactly what we're
That's what
talking about,
Tony said.
that's what we're talking about.
So then you've gotta figure out the difference, so you're gonna save 50 some odd thousand between taking the 30 odd $1,000 person, putting them in that bed that you're paying 90 for. So we're gonna have 60,000 in savings, supposedly.
Well, but unless we get enough people out to close the wing of a prison, you wouldn't get saved.
I'm gonna close the wing, you already got it.
Well, the easier way to say, if we're paying, say, 40,000 for out-of-state beds, then for each 10 beds that we don't buy, it's 400,000, so,
Yeah.
that's where you get your saving. Every bed you don't buy out of state, you'll get an immediate return. Unless there's some kind of lower limit in the contract,
No, there isn't.
no.
Not
Okay.
in this one. That's why they did this specific course of it. But they're,
All right, so, well, thank you, Dick, for doing that. We'll just have to see how it all fits in.
in your box, we're 845 to 600,000 in one side.
Most of females should.
And your one-times on our list, on the one-time list?
You got that?
You know,
Put them on.
The 300, the corrections 300.
Not on those.
And then the other 300,000 for crime victims, we're holding that depending on what we think.
I agree with.
All right, so. It's 10 after 4. And. We are. Going to. What we've tried to do is make sure that we have got every funding request. That has come our way. And so, Amy, do you have the updated sheets? Thank you.
The super list,
Mhm.
super duper. Tell people that.
And they're divided, and there probably will be some overlap, though.
Overlap with,
Well, we had requests by departments or organizations over the GovRec.
within the different categories, it could be listed in 2 different categories.
And then the public meeting requests.
Oh, you can get them on that.
Your mama.
Yeah, I know.
Sure.
Is this something we would post? Sure. Or not?
Yes, these can be posted. The people need to have a sense of exactly how much is out there.
There's 2 different.
And there are 2 lists. One is which the request we got by the public meeting. And then we've gotten some subsequent to that. And I don't know where you put. When you were putting the list together. And the reason, for example, Outright Vermont only got this like a couple weeks ago. They want $500,000. Is that on the
On the
list?
blue, on the.
On which list? Request from organizations, okay, so you can see the challenge here is to make sure that anything that has been sent to us, I don't think we're gonna make any decisions, this is more to get a document where people can see. We already went through a one-time list that showed we were over, so you're gonna have to take a look at, that and look at the lists and then we're gonna just have to make some tough choices. And I think Emily will be back tomorrow, so we're gonna be walking through some of the spreadsheets and updates that we might have. And
Well, we did the court diversion already.
Don't see anything from food bank.
it's on there.
I didn't see it. It's not on this one. That was what I knew.
Um. So.
On the public meeting.
There's some duplication, obviously, the fish hatchery seem to have a lot of, um. So, maybe I want,
That's
to
something we
So-
provided some,
have, what?
there's some things on the list that are
Yeah,
provided.
yeah, right, the main thing is, we've said, obviously, every request. We wanna review it, and, we're not gonna be taking testimony or anything, we're just gonna have to start setting some priorities. And what's gonna drop, just like happened with Senator Sears, a number of things are gonna have to not, fall into the funding, category for us. So, and then we've got the spreadsheets that we've been working from, and, which, the base appropriations, and, then the one-time revenue here, and what's on it, and then what's on the list, and people will have to argue where something needs to come higher on the list, or, should be lower. And I guess with that happy note, here is Senate Health and Welfare priorities, and I have no testimony at all on SASH. And you have that as your top priority.
We do.
I have nothing, I have no requests that came in on the public hearing, I have received nothing. So,
It was for their pilot program. The second year of the 2-year pilot program. They have a 1-year program, and they're asking for the second year.
I have no background. Obviously, the rate increases, the parent-child centers, EMS, we took care of that. So you've got everything on your list, just in order of priority.
Yes,
Okay.
and then the bills that we have. And that will be negotiated.
By this day, Derby, I've heard of that.
What?
Lake Champlain there.
Yes, apparently we've been, don't you know it's an economic engine? What's the matter with you, Senator Sears?
Yes, I'm not Lake Champlain, I'm
Uh-huh.
That the one that is funded in the capital.
Mhm.
surprised they celebration.
Mhm.
I'm not against it. I'm all for it.
Okay, well,
All the way to Benny.
Like Champlain?
Yeah.
No, honest.
and then you'll see, we're working on Pay Act, which comes with a hefty price tag. Huh?
You still got that.
Yeah, and well, there's money there, but we've added Pay Act sometimes to the budget itself. And, so we've got that still to, consider. And then we'll just have to, make it work. The state employees, in addition to what they got in Pay Act, would like to have more studies done to improve their, pension retirement. There's one study we've had right out there sort of top of the list, and that was something that Senator Ash has been very interested in for a long time, and that's reference pay, 15,000 for, reference pricing reimbursement. And the Green Mountain Care Board has indicated that they could do that study or combine it with some other work that they're doing.
Or 15,000.
For 15,
The Rand Corporation is already doing this study. It's,
yeah,
uh,
so that, uh, can be combined as opposed to, and I think Jenny, your committee took some discussion, had some discussion on that.
we did last year.
So, on that cheery note, I'm going to suggest that we, call it a day, and we'll reconvene tomorrow and see how much we can, close out. No,
No, Chair.
because